Welcome to CyberMAYnia, cyber talks with the brightest minds in cybersecurity. Discussing risks, AI, emerging threats, workforce challenges, and more. With your host, May Brooks.
Hello and welcome to CyberMAYnia. With me today is the phenomenal Tracy Hickey. Hey, Tracy, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. And we're going to have an amazing show today. I just know we will. But I'm going to start off with telling people that they really want to wait for the ending of this show. They really do, because we know what's coming. You don't, so you really want to listen to the end.
Oh, so stick around. You're gonna love it.
Yeah. You're gonna love it. So we'll keep it very serious with you telling us a little bit about you, yourself, and your pretty crazy story in cybersecurity.
Fantastic. So yeah, I started out working in Zappos warehouse. So if you've ever bought shoes from Zappos.com, that is where I started. I was doing all of their video and image editing, and I got really interested in IT and cybersecurity, so decided to go back to school and started out in the application security team over in the Zappos warehouse. Amazon purchased Zappos, and we all kind of rolled into their systems. I taught myself how to do everything. So server maintenance, patch cables, MDF cabinet, server patching, server routing, you name it. I taught myself how to do it while I was going through school. Ended up running my own warehouse. So all the IT plus purchasing, you name it. That baby was mine. I did everything. And from there, I left for about 6 months to kind of get my feet dirty in cloud security. And then ended up working for Amazon Web Services in 2014. So I moved from Kentucky to Dallas, Texas. And I was there for, 10 years before I finally moved to Alaska. But yeah, I did a little bit of everything. I worked in premium support, so first line of defense for all of our customers that really needed help with AWS services. I launched the security profile, and then ended up working with the service teams to launch a bunch of their different services. So when KMS launched, Cloud HSM, Secrets Manager, ACM, and ACM Private CA, I worked with the service teams to launch a bunch of those. Beta testing, troubleshooting, bug bashing, document writing, you name it. Was the first subject matter expert for a few different ones. So I got to do a lot of training for other individuals. And then I started working for professional services, doing consulting in AWS, and was building a lot of security infrastructure and guardrails for customers. And our VP, Hart Rossman, found me and was like, hey, you should come work in internal security. So that's where I've been ever since. And then about 2 years ago, I wrote a narrative that got approved by Matt Garman that allowed me to start a program so that when anyone in AWS handles regulated data or production access for our customers, my team is the one who puts forth the guardrails and says, okay, this data falls under HIPAA compliance. Here's what we need to make sure we're secure. This one falls under GDPR. Here's what we need. And move it forward. So we've been able to enable a lot of revenue for our AWS services and service teams like ProServe and solutions architects.
Which is so phenomenal, and I have so many follow-up questions. And the reason for me it really resonates with me is the fact that you were able to take cybersecurity and turn it from a money spending unit into sort of a money making unit. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about it back in Vegas. Maybe I'm wrong. This is something that I've been very passionate about in the last few years, trying to find ways in which cybersecurity can positively impact the business bottom line. So I want to ask you, from your experience as someone who's been involved with such an initiative, who influenced directly AWS's revenue, which is phenomenal. What are some of the things that helped you first even think about doing something like this? Because a lot of cybersecurity people don't even think about the business side. So first, what inspired you to think about it, and how did you approach this project?
So first is we kind of had the inkling that they were doing it anyways and just weren't being so secure about it. So we wanted to get ahead of that. We wanted to make sure that if that was the direction our customers needed us, we wanted to be prepared and make sure we're giving them the full AWS experience. So we went through, did lots of surveys, lots of diving into different engagements, what our customers really needed from us, how they needed us to show up for them. And from there, we researched a lot of the different privacy frameworks across the world. So we wanted to use some of the bigger ones. Because I know if you've ever looked at some like CCNA in California, like it's modeled after GDPR. So you've got a lot that are very standard. You've got your NIST and your ISO. So we kind of went through, dug through a few of those, figured out where our major controls lied. Was it logging and monitoring, encryption? Where did we draw the line for shared responsibility? Making sure that we've got bases covered on both sides and we're protected. And then figured out, okay, how quickly can we streamline these? Because if you're trying to take 4 to 6 months to do this stuff, you're never going to actually make money off of it. You're never going to open the revenue. So how can we make it as quick as possible? So we started out with something that looked a little bit almost like an audit type questionnaire, but it was really invasive and it took a long time to figure out. So we went back to the drawing board and we're like, okay, how can we streamline this? We were able to consolidate a bunch of the controls down. So we went from roughly like 140-ish down to like 70. So cut them in half. And then we went through and changed up our model to where it's more of an attestation. And we broke the pieces out between who is a customer responsibility and then which is a AWS responsibility. And so you could just go down through the list quickly now and say, yes, have this, no, have this. For the no ones, okay, what's your mitigation? Are we going to build in a new policy? Whatever. Customers loved that. And it enabled them to have very secure services with us, but move very quickly. We got our approval times down from roughly 30 days down to even 16 or less. Some can get approved in 2 to 3 days, which means you get your statement of work, you get your signature, you get to launch your engagement super fast. And when customers saw the level of security and diligence we were putting into it, we actually started receiving bigger deal sizes. They wanted us to do more, migrate more servers, modernize more servers, because they knew not only did we just say, yes, we take security seriously, but we were actively showing them. And it actually kind of led a little bit more into that. So it wasn't even just enabling revenue for professional services and other areas inside AWS, but customers started wanting to know, how do we do this? And can you come teach us how to do this? So from there, we were able to actually build offerings to bring in a little bit more revenue to say, yeah, we'll totally come in, we'll set up your environment, we'll get everything ready, all your controls are good, here's your test environment. So from now on, when you have third-party contractors, you can bring them into this environment, you're set up, you're good to go. It was even the same for how we vet our partners. What kind of security guardrails and requirements do we have when we want to put a partner on an engagement and allow them to work for us? Giving our customers that exact same, how do we vet them? How do we set up their controls so that they are more confident with their own external contractors? So it just kind of snowballed up, but it just started with, the curious question. I bet they're doing it. Let's go find out.
Well, I absolutely love this because when an organization as big as AWS does something like this, it has ripple effects that can really change this industry. And I absolutely love that. That's why I'm really into such project, because it does influence the way that the entire industry works. And I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing the other big providers do something similar today. I'm guessing, well, for some of them I do know. But yeah, but I'm saying they're doing things and it helps us mature as an industry. Again, looking at what are the benefits of doing cybersecurity. Back to your background story, because I'm completely fascinated with this background story, because you transitioned a lot from the warehouse, video, IT, cybersecurity, internal, external services, cloud, all over the place. I love that. I have not the same background story, but also very diverse background story. And I want to ask you a little bit about the skills and experiences you experienced in earlier roles and how they help you today in your current role or in other roles you've had over the years.
Yeah, sure. like I said, working in the warehouse and doing the IT there, I kind of just taught myself a lot of it through YouTube videos, talking to coworkers who've already done it, stuff like that. But one of the most shocking skills I found that I never in my life thought would help me in IT, one of my first two degrees is actually in graphic design. And so I have three associates, graphic design, computer web design, and then forensics and security. And I never in my life thought the graphics design one would help anything in security. But when I started getting into the consulting piece of it and having to draw up diagrams and really create these images that helped explain to customers how we were protecting things and how their network was secure, and I was able to use the graphic design skills that I learned just to make things clear and easily viewable and easily understandable. And so that was just one of the weird things to me where I never thought they would actually connect. Um, but I think the biggest skills that I've learned along the way are really just more personal and growth skills than the technical skills. Like the tech skills are super important, but for me, I feel like anyone can pick it up if you stare at it long enough. It's more of, do you have the drive? Do you have the curiosity? Do you have the questioning that goes on in your head? Because if you just ask, oh, how does encryption work? It's a pretty straightforward, I can pretty high level explain how encryption works in about 5 minutes. But then if you don't have the drive to say, well, how do the algorithms work? What's the difference between them? What's more secure? How quickly can they be broken? Like you're really not going to go any further than just that high level understanding. And so that helped me a lot because I know they always say curiosity kills the cat, but I am an uber curious person, and I'd probably be a lifetime student if it wasn't for student loans. So I'm constantly wanting to learn more about what I'm doing, and it's translated into even the privacy side as well. Like you can read into HIPAA, you can read into GDPR, you can understand all these different laws, but why is there a law? What triggered it? What happens if it isn't followed? What were some of the events that led to the creations? And so I just think those investigatory skills and the curious personal skills is kind of what's kept me driving further and further and just bouncing from place to place. Because to your point, I've done video editing, I've done image editing, purchasing, you name it. And it's one of those things like I just never wanted to settle. I never wanted to feel stagnant. And so when I would get a little like, okay, I feel like I've done all I can here, let's find something else to poke into. And then that would just lead me into another field and another field.
I love that because I think that once you learn something, you can't unlearn it and you don't know when it will meet you in a later stage of your life. And my degree, my BA is actually in biology. And for years, I thought that was a complete waste of time until I had a few projects with HMOs and hospitals and biotech startups. And all of a sudden, the fact that I could understand what they do and talk like with the business side and understand their goals and everything, that was a huge differentiator to other people who were at least as professional as I was, probably more, but they didn't have that background, so they didn't understand that industry.
Yeah, you
So
never
I
know
think,
when those weird skills you've got are going to come
yeah,
into play and be helpful.
and I think that a lot of people, when they transition into cybersecurity, and I work with a lot of people who want to transition to cybersecurity, they want to sort of shift, delete everything they've done before. And I actually had that conversation a few days ago with someone who decided she wants to move into cybersecurity. She wants to transition. She's doing the work. I have to say she's doing the work. She's getting the certifications and she's studying and she's doing networking event and everything. But when I was looking at her resume, I was like, why is, I know her background. Why isn't it here? It's a fascinating background. A lot of people will hire you not because of your cybersecurity skills. I mean, I can hire someone who's 22 years old and will have more cybersecurity skills. But your background, your story, your experiences, they matter. They really do matter.
Oh, 100%. You can't, I like to say, a lot of people are always like, oh, you can't go home again. And that's true. You can't change what you've been through, where you've come from, what you've learned along the path. And all of those are skills that, even though you don't think so, have weird ways of translating into what
Mm-hmm.
you do down the road. And for me, I love the excitement of never knowing what I'm going to get into, but also what is going to pop up in the back of my mind that I've thought about because of something I'm working on now. That is again completely unrelated. Like it could be something from one of my Adobe Photoshop classes. And I'm drawing a design and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that tool." And that's something I used 20 years ago.
But again, these are the experiences that shape us. I love that. So, let's talk about innovation and creativity. A lot of people think that cybersecurity is very squared. And no, I personally think it's one of the most creative things you can do in your life. Honestly, I love it to bits. So I want to ask a little bit about how do you foster that sort of mindset of creativity, of innovation, not just for yourself, but for your team as well, because a lot of cybersecurity people don't even think about that. How do they incorporate those new tools as well?
Yeah, I like to challenge them. So, for myself as well, I'm always challenging myself to figure out how I can do better, how I can improve on things. How can I make something run smoother? One of my favorite things is just because it works doesn't mean it can't be better. And so I'm constantly looking into,
Very not IT from your side.
I know,
Just
right?
saying.
Like,
Yeah.
no, just because it works doesn't mean it can't be better. Like, you can automate
Don't fix
things, you can streamline things. Definitely don't touch your production, setup of it, play in dev, but
Yeah.
still. And I like to do that with my team too. Like, I challenge them and I give them kind of open reign and open floor. Like, if you've ever listened to Amazon, they're famous for their two-way door decisions. And I really love that. As long as we can revert back, go test and do whatever you want. You've got this great idea, fantastic. Go run with it. Create a POC. Show me a demo or, give me the rundown idea. One thing I don't want to ever do is I don't want to be like, I need you to run every single idea by me in detail with a PRFAQ and a narrative. I'm like, to me, that's just red tape. It slows
Yeah.
down the innovation. You shoot me an idea, cool, that makes sense, or here's some caveats, or here's some things to think about, but go run and test it. And we've done great with that over the last 2 years. Like, that's honestly all the improvements that have come on my team from when we started this program have come from us just bouncing ideas off and like, I'm going to go test this. Or, the random middle of the night epiphany that you have, and you're like, I'm going to, Slack somebody right now so I don't forget this. Like, hey, can you go see if A, B, and C is possible? I just did something the other day where I was laying at night and I'm like, it's really annoying having to refresh a ticket queue to make sure, if you've got tickets assigned to you that, something's ready for review or whatever. Like, I wonder if there's a way we can notify. And we use a lot of internal tools and they don't always connect on the back end. And so there's not an easy way to do that. So I'm talking to one of my guys who knows how to code a little bit because trust me, I can't code my way out of a brown paper bag. And I'm like, could we say if this is triggered, it looks at this queue, looks at this backend queue, and then says, okay, here's the on-call, finds the on-call Slack person, and then sends them a message through the API. Like, is that possible? And so now they're off running to see if that's something we can do to remove yet one more manual step. And while it seems small, like, oh, I'm going to get a ticket notification, you have no idea how much time it saves not having to remind yourself every hour to go back and check the queue so that you remain within your, service level agreement on ticket response times. Because we have a 48-hour own imposed SLA. And, I am pretty adamant, like I want to keep that. That is a very short turnaround, helps our business. I want to make sure we stay there. And if I miss a ticket coming in while I'm on call, I could potentially, affect my customers that way. So it seems small, but it's something that adds up over time.
It definitely does. And you talked about notifications. So notification in my eyes always lead to a lot of pressure, a lot of high pressure. Getting those notifications all the time. Like before we started this podcast, I closed all the notifications just so I can focus, because honestly, you can't focus when things pop up all the time. And I'm sure that in a place like AWS, you have so many people sort of tagging you all day long, asking for your advice and your insights and your approvals and whatever. And as someone who leads a team, what helps you manage that high pressure environment and also help your team cope with this environment?
I definitely make sure we have a lot of fun. So to me, that is key. That is what has prevented me from being burnt out, overwhelmed, because you are constantly pinged. And I am one of those people that if I see a notification bubble, I've got to close it. Like that's just one of my OCD things. I got to close it. I can't
Yeah.
let it sit open. And so I'm constantly, context switching back and forth. And for me, it works, but I know for others it doesn't. So I try to work with my team to really understand how their mental models work first and figure out, okay, just because you're getting a notification, you've got a timer, and we've got a bunch of different timer tools and stuff that go on that we can say, okay, you've got a notification, give yourself 2 hours to respond to it. We're still remaining within our SLA because it's, like I said, 48 hours after notification, but you don't feel as rushed and pressured. We have pretty much a weekly happy hour that we do every Wednesday where the entire team has the ability to jump on. It's not mandatory, but just jump on, have a drink, coffee, tea, margarita, whatever you want, depending on your time zone. And we just talk, not about work, just about our home lives, how our dogs are doing, how our cats, kids, if there's any fun events going on, we've had any fun travel. And we just try to keep it lightweight. But then also throughout the week, I will pop in memes into our chat. Other people will pop in funny stories or they'll send funny anecdotes they've heard. And so we just try to keep each other boosted mentally into those positive areas because otherwise you will get burnt out.
Burnout.
You will get
Yeah.
inundated with just so many messages, so many pings. Like you'll just be ready to pull your hair out, flip a table, and walk away. Like,
Yeah.
I've
True.
been there.
Yeah. Yes. So I think that a lot of people, I love what you just said about keeping it fun. And I think that you mentioned before that if you could have had it your way, you'd be a lifelong learner. I consider myself a lifelong student. I learn something new each and every single day. It's one of the best habits. I actually started 1,900 days ago. Well, I started way before, but I'm now on a 1,900 day streak as of this morning at
Wow.
Duolingo. So every single
Oh,
morning, yeah, every single morning,
congratulations.
thank you. I start my morning by opening Duolingo, doing, it could be 5 minutes if I don't have time, or 15 minutes if I have a lazy morning. And usually I work very late at night, so sometimes I do allow myself a lazy morning. But I know that by the time I go to the office, I've already learned something new. And I think that in a field like cybersecurity, and the fact that it's not cybersecurity related is actually something that I decided intentionally.
Hmm.
Although I have time allocated each and every single day to learning something new in cybersecurity, to exploring something new. And I want to ask you again, high pressure environment, we know that this is an ever evolving field. How do you incorporate self-learning and staying up to date with the current trends, the current threats, the current advancements in this very evolving world, especially, well, you're in AWS. I mean, it's one of the most evolving parts of cybersecurity ever.
Oh, I have signed up to so many different RSS feeds, newsletters, you name it. So I try to take time, at least 5 minutes every day, to look at like the SANS newsletter that comes out, or the IAPP, or all the different things that come to my inbox, and it'll talk about a new trend, which right now we all know is the big shiny, AIML and Gen AI. But also it'll show like, oh, this security event happened. Here's what people did to deal with it. Here's how they responded. Here's how the company recovered. And I like to read up on those because to me they're fascinating. Like I feel like cybersecurity is always kind of one step behind the individuals that are doing the malicious activities. It's very hard to always be completely proactive because you just never know what people are going to come up with. You cannot imagine the imagination of others and how they could think of to get into things. So, but I try to be proactive as possible. And I feel like reading some of those newsletters on what happened or new trends or new technologies, it will at least give me a small step up so I can investigate those myself. I can learn as much as I want and then try to use that and like, oh, I know this is coming. Here's some things we can do to prepare for it. Even if it's, to your point, new technology trends, like, we know that GDPR is getting very, very heavily into more strict rules on their medical data. it already covers medical data, but they're trying to look to strengthen those a bit more, even very similar to how the US HIPAA laws have worked. And so while it's not there yet, it's not in Parliament, it's not gone through, anything like that, that gives us a hands up till we can start looking into that. The same, I think they call it HISA, the HISA stuff that's coming out for HIPAA. It's not in place yet, but we know it's coming. So we can start digging in now to make sure our controls, our requirements, our everything are up to date. So when we go work with our customers on their HIPAA engagements, we can help inform them, we can give them more of a value add, and then help them prepare for this as well, because we've already done the due diligence for them. And so that's the kind of the part I love, is just that ever learning. But I read the RSS feeds, I read the newsletters, and then I will just go out and look at like CNN and different news outlets to see what kind of cybersecurity events have happened or news stories that they're sharing.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, I can see that obviously you're very passionate about this industry, which makes it easier. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, get into this industry and maybe they don't find their niche and then they lose the drive. And this is why I love doing this podcast, because I get to meet people from from every single role you can think of. And most of the people who are engaged and who want to do things like public speaking or podcasting or whatever are people who are passionate. And I hope this inspires people who are less passionate to find their passion, because there's so many things in cybersecurity. If you don't like what you're doing now, pivot.
Yeah, there's so many different fields, and part of, I think, my driver has always been I'm stubborn too, and so when I get told that I can't do something, I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong. When I first started, I was told, security is not a thing. You need to go focus and be a Linux admin, and I'm like, yeah, okay, no, and I went and did what I wanted, and I focused on permissions and firewall rules, and I've been told, oh, you can't run a team of regulated data engagements. And I'm like, okay. And then I went and did it. Like that stubbornness is kind of what drives me. And it's helped me find some of those passions, because sometimes you don't always have the motivation to really go out and look at those different things until someone tells you you can't. And then that's when my toddler mentality kicks in. I'm like, oh, you said no, I'm gonna go do it now. And I just, I'm my stubborn little my little stubborn butt over there, and I'm like, I'm gonna go do this. And then I just dive headfirst into it, and I put my all into it, and that is my focus. And I love, and that's how I found my passions. That's how I found I loved cryptography. And I got really into working with our cloud HSMs and our customers and understanding how all of those pieces worked on those HSM devices, and then how the back end of KMS works with the HSM devices. And it just led to even more and more and more, because first it was like, oh, I just love firewall rules and permissions policies so much. And then, you get to a point where you can only tell people you're missing a comma in your permissions policy before you just go crazy. And then it's just like, I'm going to go digging into something else. And it's like, oh, well, KMS is launching, but I don't think you'll understand it. I'm like, okay. And then I just dug into it. And then, so now here I am. And I'm still really good friends with a lot of the GMs and SVPs that run a lot of our crypto services. And I run into them at reInvent and Reinforce, and it's still like the old days. Like, nothing's ever changed.
I absolutely love that. Well, I think that the fact that you have that ability to embrace who you are and say, I'm going to do that, even if someone told me no, I'm going to go head first, dive in and do something that I'm passionate about. I think that is part of your success, and probably the reason people also look up to you and let you do all those crazy things, because you make them work.
Yeah,
So,
my manager actually, and I was still in premium support, he used to laugh at me because he was like, you really just go and do what you want, don't you? And I was like, yeah. I was like, but it works, right? He's like, yeah, everything's successful. So he actually bought me a mug that had a cat on it that just said, I do what I want. And it sat on my desk for the longest time because he's like,
so
it works.
Is that the ears? Yeah, it's like, wow, it is like a cat. That is definitely like a cat, and I have two of them. Are they here? No. Oh, one of them is asleep. Of course, he's asleep.
Yeah, I got 4 running around somewhere. 4 cats, a pug, and a Frenchie. My house is a zoo.
Ooh, that is a full house. No, I only have the two cats and the fish. I don't like the fish. Those are my sons. Yeah. So when we met back in ICT Security Congress, you sort of delivered sort of delivered.
Mine.
Sort of. Yeah, you lost your voice. It was upsetting, but one of your team members covered up for you, and she did a wonderful job as well. And you both talked about personal branding. And this is, by the way, one of the things I absolutely love about this podcast is talking to people who do understand personal branding and why it's important and how can it help your career in cybersecurity. So I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Now that you have your voice back.
Yes, now that I have it back, I can finally speak again. I think everyone around me is very sad I can speak again, but I'm happy.
I'm not.
To me, personal branding is so important because it speaks to who you are. And for me, that's how I've earned trust with all my customers. I'm very transparent. I don't talk in corporate speak. I don't, to talk to me on the street, I mean, listen to me now. I don't sound like your average corporate IT professional. I remember talking to customers in premium support when I'm helping them fix their problems in security about gremlins, and they're like, "Oh, why is my server down? Gremlins pulled the cable. Give me a second, I'll go check." Or they're like, "Oh, it's like magic," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's totally my unicorn magic." That is how I talk on a daily basis, and so I don't change myself when I talk to my customers. I don't know about you, but anytime I've ever had to call like my cell phone company, my cable provider, and I have to listen to them talk to me like a robot and read off that speech, I want to flip a table. Like it drives me insane. Yes. And so like I refuse to ever be that way. I refuse to ever come off like a robot. I'm always going to be just me, just Tracy. And it really started building trust with a lot of customers. I would have repeat customers call in who would have problems with a service, not even in security, but they'd be like, "I want to talk to Tracy because even if she doesn't know how to fix my database, I know she'll walk me through it and she'll find someone to help me that will help me like she will." And so it really helped build up that trust with them just by being myself. They realized I was someone they could depend on, that they could come back to. If I didn't know the answer, I would find out and let them know ASAP. And to me, that's what people are looking for, especially when they're having problems, whether it be cybersecurity or anything else. That's a bad day for them. They're looking for someone to have empathy, to help them out, show that they understand, and be willing to walk them through it. And that doesn't mean you have to explain it to them like they're 5, but you also never know who you're talking to. I've helped the receptionist figure out how to use Finder on her Mac, and I've helped a CISO figure out how to fix their cloud HSMs. Like you never know who you're talking to, and for that person, it could be a very bad day. So just starting out with empathy and being transparent and saying, "I don't know the problem, but I'll help you figure it out," went a long way. And then I kind of continued that. So, you see my Stitch shirt. I like to dress fun. I don't think I own any corporate clothing whatsoever. I don't think I have for probably 20 years now. So I would, they'd send me to customer sites to talk to them about IAM or Cloud HSM or other security services. And I'd show up in jeans and like a logo t-shirt, and it would be like Stitch or something from my childhood that I just refuse to let go of, like there'd be a picture of Labyrinth or the Dark Crystal or some other cartoon I watched as a kid, and that would always kick off conversations with those in the room, like, "Oh, I love your shirt," or "I love your hair," or "Oh, that's such a cool tattoo," and it just kind of builds that quick rapport with them. And so I love that Amazon is one of those places where they've never made me be different than who I am. They've always just let me shine through as I am. And so that own personal branding of myself of like, this is who I am, tattoos, colored hair and all. They're not afraid to put me in front of a big crowd. They're not afraid to, send me to Netflix or one of our other big customers. And I immediately can build the relationship to where the customers inherently will trust me. They understand I know what I'm talking about. I'm there to help them. And they're like, "Cool, we're all in. We're good." And that has been huge for me because I have seen others come in and they try to model themselves after what they think corporate IT should be like or security should be like. And then they end up burning out or being unhappy because they don't have the interactions that they're looking to drive them, or they don't have those personal experiences that help drive that passion to help other people or dive into these things. And so I keep trying to go back and tell them, "Well, is this how you enjoy talking? Is this how you enjoy interacting with people?" And they're like, "No." Well, then don't do it.
Well, I think that if someone is going to judge you by what you wear, then they would judge you by your gender, or they would judge you by your voice, or by your accent, or by the color of your eyes. It's like, it is what it is. And I think that a lot of people are very afraid of that. A lot of people are afraid. I know that for me, when I started out very young, and when I was 24, I already had 6 years of experience in cybersecurity. Because I started very young, like corporate experience, professional experience.
Wow.
Yeah, I started very young. So I think the biggest secret in the industry, in the Israeli industry at the time, was how old I actually was. So whoever asked, "Oh, I'm older than I look," I wasn't older than I looked. No. And I used to dress up like I used to do my makeup that today, even for the most important meeting of my life, I will never, ever spend that amount of time in doing my, like, no way. I don't have that energy anymore. I used to do it in my 20s because I wanted to look older, but now in my 40s, I really couldn't be bothered. And at some point, I realized that it doesn't matter if I wear the nice suit or the makeup, or people will judge me because I'm a woman in cybersecurity and will ask me, I stood backstage one day about to go up and speak. And one of the people came up to me and told me, we're out of refreshments.
Yeah, I had a manager ask me to go get him coffee. I have had people call in, and as soon as they hear my voice, they're like, I need to talk to a man. Only a man can fix my issue. And I'm like, okay, sure. Whatever. I'm not going to get offended because I'm not going to change your opinion.
Exactly.
Send them off to my colleague, and then they ask the same question. My colleague's like, you really need our subject matter expert. But they just went to lunch. If you give about an hour, they'll call you back. And then I'm the one that calls them back. And it just immediately humbles them. They're like, oh, you're the expert? I'm like, yeah, I taught them everything they know.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, if someone will judge you because of your gender, then they will judge you because of your clothes. They will judge you because of your hair. It's their thing. It's not me.
Yeah, that's a them problem. And so I try not to stress on it. Like, you're not going to change people's opinions. You're not going to change their thought pattern or what their expectations are. So to me, that's not something worth stressing over. Like, that's not something that you need to spend the mental energy on. Instead, redirect it. Focus that energy of like, oh, I'm frustrated. I can't believe they do that. Cool. I'm just going to go learn something to make myself better. Because there's no point in wasting that mental energy on that. There's better things to spend your time and energy on.
Absolutely. Except for personal branding, like internally or with your customers, you also do a lot of public speaking events. And I know that's something that a lot of people are absolutely terrified from. I used to be terrified of public speaking. I'm
still terrified. I still shake every time I get ready to go on stage.
Well, I get excited now, but let's say if you would have asked me 10.5 years ago, what's the one thing that will never, ever, ever happen is me standing on stage or me teaching, like, oh, dude, wow, you took something like real good. Tell me what, like, no. And things change. So, but I love the fact that you're saying that you're still trembling before you go on stage. How do you prepare for that?
Every time.
How do you prepare for talks, for public engagements, for networking? People are so scared of it. And I think someone like you who does it so much can give advice that will really resonate.
Honestly, you've really got to throw yourself into it, because if you don't, it's one of those things, if you don't start, it's hard to make it keep going. So once you start, though, just do that first one. Start small. Go talk in front of your team. Then go talk in front of like your larger team. Like I lead a team of 8, but my overall team that I'm a sister part of is like 40 people. So I'll start with my team. And then I'll go to our larger team. And then I would start branching out and doing like lunch and learns. And I'd go talk to big groups of like our TAM community or our support community, whatever. And then kind of building my way up to speaking at like an internal security summit where it's just Amazon people before I started going into big customer speaking. Taking those baby steps really helped. But yeah, I totally will sit there and before a meeting, like you can't visibly see it, but I can feel it. Like my body is trembling. I'm shaking like I'm cold, and it's from nerves and anxiety. And I just have to take a few deep breaths and remind myself, I am here because I know what I'm talking about. People have listened to me, they see my past, they know my career, they understand my topic, and they understand that I am someone who can very fluently and clearly speak about this, and I guess I should say properly be able to speak about this, because there's a lot of people who can talk and just say wrong things. So I actually do know what I'm talking about, so I have to continue to remind myself about that. And it also really helps, like when I'm actually on stage, I don't make eye contact with anybody, because that sets off more of the anxiety, but I look at the middle of their forehead. And so for them, it looks like you're making eye contact, but for you, it kind of reduces that sensory overload. And so I tend to, I know some people are like, oh, just picture everyone in a banana suit or something like that to ease your nerves. Like that would make me cackle. Like I would just forever giggle. So yeah, I look at their forehead, or I'll focus on like a piece of clothing or something they're wearing. So as you're scanning the crowd, like, I don't know, make it a game. Look for fun items, especially at reInvent and Reinforce. Like people love to dress up in weird, goofy stuff, sequins, glitter.
Ooh, I like that.
One of my best friends is always wearing a suit that he's either covered in clouds or chili peppers or something like that. So I'll make it a game with myself, and I'll look through the crowd and see like how many buttons I can find, like weird, unique pins, or how many different colors I can see. And I'll kind of keep a mental track as I'm talking. And it kind of takes the focus away from I'm speaking in front of a large crowd to I'm just talking and then doing something else and multitasking as I go. And it just takes away the anxiety for me. So by the end of it, like I've stopped shaking, I'm having fun, I'm laughing, making jokes with people on stage, and it just makes it for an easier transition. But those are some of just the tips I've had to use.
Fantastic. I think that, well, I don't think everyone should go on stage, and it's not about going on stage, but I think it is about networking and find your way of doing that. And if it's via going to conferences, standing on stage, doing a podcast, just hanging out on WhatsApp or Slack or whatever groups, do it. But we're part of a community, and I think that this job, this industry is too stressful to handle on your own. I mean, we need our tribe. We need them.
Absolutely. You've got to have the friends that you can talk to, that you can vent to, that, aren't trying to solution things for you, but are just willing to listen to you gripe and moan about some experience you had, and then commiserate with you, and then you both go have a drink and you're all good.
Yeah, exactly. Having a drink, yeah, that's definitely. This is something we do a lot. I think.
Hey, it's always happy hour somewhere.
It is. Well, I work in the US and I'm based in the Middle East, so for me, it's usually happy hour, either for me or for whoever I'm talking to. Yeah, it's an excuse. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's totally. I mean, my entire team is spread from East Coast to West Coast, so no matter who I'm talking to, it's happy hour somewhere.
See. If not, we always have Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, towards the end of these sessions, I always do very quick pop-up question sort of thing. Whatever comes to mind, no right or wrong answers. Are you ready?
I am ready.
You're ready. Okay,
Maybe.
so
Yes.
Maybe. Okay, well, maybe it's me. Well, there was one thing I wanted to ask you, so we'll do it in the pop quiz.
Okay.
What's the best piece of advice you received throughout your career?
Oh gosh, don't be afraid to say I don't know. People get so scared of admitting they don't know something, and so the best piece of advice I ever got from my mentor is like, you don't know? Cool, say it. Say you don't know, but that you'll go find out. Because then not only are you continuing to earn trust with who's asking you questions, but you're learning something new. And so it took a while to get the hang of that, because it's kind of inherent when you're supposed to be seen as this powerful position, about cyber and IT and all this stuff. It's terrifying to admit you don't know something. But to finally realize, like, it's okay to acknowledge that and then use it as a reason to go learn something. And then you just don't realize, like, that just inherently builds trust with whoever's talking to you, because then they realize you're not just going to outright lie to them or tell them a story or make a guess at something you're not sure about, which could lead them down a wrong path. And so 100%, I still abide by that. Like, I've got so many people who are like, oh, how do I do this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to find out, though. I'll talk to you about an hour.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's actually probably the best piece of advice you can give to someone starting their career, just saying. Fantastic. If you haven't chosen a career in tech, what would you be doing today?
Oh, 100% a veterinarian, but I would be sobbing every day because I'm such a softie. I worked as a vet tech before I ever went into school and worked at Zappos, and I love working with animals. So I'd probably be a vet or a zoologist or some kind of aquamarine biologist or something like that. Just something to do with animals.
Oh, amazing. Beautiful. What's the most unexpected place your cybersecurity journey took you?
I don't necessarily know that it was unexpected, but it was really exciting. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to go to Ireland. Like I've always dreamed about it. My old family has a castle, like way back in the line that once you prove you're part of the family tree, you get to go stay a night for free. It's like a super haunted castle, like all this stuff. And I was like, I never thought I'd actually get there. That was the very first place AWS ever sent me when they sent me on an international trip. My very first stamp on my very first passport was I got to go to Ireland and teach them, and I had so much fun. So not necessarily unusual, but very unexpected and exciting.
Absolutely. One of my favorite places.
I
How
love
do you
it.
celebrate? It's beautiful. How do you celebrate your achievements?
Um, you're gonna laugh. So
With a
anytime,
drink. No.
well, no, honestly, I dance with my dogs. I dance with my cats. So every time something good happens, like I had the narrative read with Matt Garman, and it went amazing. And yes, it was 2 years ago. And anyone who's ever had to deliver a narrative like to an SVP, it's terrifying. You never know what they're gonna say. And 10 minutes, he read through it, skimmed it, was like, yeah, sounds fantastic, approved. No questions asked, nothing. And I got told by like my leadership that never happens. There's never no questions from him. And so I was like, well, heck yeah, like that must have been awesome. I just went and danced with my dogs. Like I picked them up
Oh,
and I'm
that's
like
amazing.
dancing around the living room, spinning in circles. And then I also buy myself a shiny. So it could be something as simple as a small toy. Like when I got my team together, I bought myself my little Kawaka. So
Oh, I like him.
he just
Oh,
kind of hangs out on my desk. So I just buy myself something small to celebrate that's fun. Because to me, when you get those achievements, like it's a fun moment. So do something fun to celebrate it. And
I
then,
love that.
I've got the puppy who wants to come say hi. So
Oh,
this is
hello, puppy.
Poe.
Hello, Poe.
She has been bringing me toys for the last hour now.
I'm sorry, Poe. I'll let it go in a minute. I promise. Well, so we'll have to wrap this up with a great question.
Yeah.
If your cybersecurity journey was a movie, what would be the title?
Oh gosh. Well, I guess Die Hard's already taken.
Kinda.
I don't know. Like that's actually a tough one, but I think it would be, you know, to quote another movie, like think of like Homeward Bound. Like I started out in kind of figuring out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, and the more choices I made, the more forks I took in my path, I feel like I'm home now. I feel like this is where I belong. And I've gone through lots of trials and tribulations. I've figured out how to do things, what worked for me, what didn't. I've been under managers that have not been great leaders. I've been under managers that have been fantastic leaders. And so going through all of that has kind of just shaped me and led me to where I am today. And it's built my confidence. It's kind of made me who I am. And so, but you back to your point about don't discredit all of your life experiences and all the things you've learned because eventually they'll lead you home and you'll never know how it all works. And
I
yeah,
think I'm, I'm home now. Is a pretty good title.
I like
Yeah,
that.
I will listen to that. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today. It was as phenomenal as I knew it would be. So inspirational. And for those of you watching, don't forget to subscribe and join us next time here on CyberMAYnia.
It's time for CyberMAYnia bloopers.
Yeah, it's gonna
Nice.
be funny. It's gonna be funny. With me today is the phenomenal Tracy Hickey. Hickey? No, definitely not. Is it? No, it's not.
yeah, it's Hickey.
It is?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
said
it's like
authentic self.
Mickey Mouse, but with an H.